Ever wondered what happens when woke folks can't handle the reality of their decisions? Watch as these individuals grapple with the facts and regret their transitions. Stick around. This is going to be one eye-opening ride. Hey there, everyone. Today, we're driving headfirst into the heated debate around transitioning, a topic, though, wokies love to push down our throats. But here's the thing. They never talk about the harsh reality and irreversible consequences that many people face. So get ready, because we're exposing the truth they avoid like plague. First up, we have Helena Kirshner, who was battling an eating disorder when she stumbled into the liberal idea of transgenderism. She was practically peer pressured into transitioning, but thankfully she didn't take that final leap. Otherwise, the damage could have been completely irreversible.
You felt what every young woman I've ever met felt at a certain age, which is uncomfortable with yourself. And it feels like you were exploited at that moment of weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, it's completely normal for not only young girls, but often young boys too, to feel uncomfortable with themselves, uncomfortable with their body. But we have this ideology that is especially prevalent online that says that if you have those feelings, that means you're trans. I mean, there are literally people who say, if you don't even like your voice on a recording, that's a sign of gender dysphoria, and you need to go see a medical professional because you're trans.
Talk about taking advantage of people.
I really feel afraid for these other young girls like myself who they might not be. I consider myself lucky that I was able to get out of it unscarred really medically, but there's so many young people who can't say the same.
Did you catch that? It looks like this trans movement has pushed an entire generation so far off course that they're diving headfirst into life-altering decisions without ever being told the full story. The pressure is real, and the consequences even more so. However, Helena is not just an isolated example. Ryan also decided not to do the surgery in the nick of time. In her interview with Dr. Phil, she explained the reality of these procedures and their emotional impact.
You get labeled really quickly, correct?
You do, immediately as transphobic.
Why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of the transgender community, they push so much for acceptance that when you immediately, or anytime you start to question them, even if it's out of the goodness of your heart to try and make sure that they're making the right decision, anything that goes against their narrative is just immediately labeled as transphobic. I haven't had any top surgeries, but I did get approved for it.
Okay, that's what it is. You got approved for it.
I did. I got approved. And how that worked, it was scarily easy to do because I had just called a therapist and I had scheduled one appointment, for a 30-minute session to talk about it. And I essentially walked in. I said, I identify as transgender and I want to get top surgery. And we chatted for a bit, maybe for half an hour. And at the end of the session, she wrote me an approval letter to send to my insurance. And then I got approved just like that.
When you first started, you went in, you said, to Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And they gave you testosterone immediately.
Yeah, I essentially just made a phone call and said, I want to transition. And it was immediately given. I got a prescription and went to pick it up a week later.
Did they ask you questions? Did they do any psychological testing? Did they ask you why? What was your motive?
It was completely self-diagnosed.
Ryan is just one of 1,000 examples of how deep this goes, and trust me, it only gets worse from here. Now let's talk about those who weren't so lucky. The ones who took the plunge into surgical transition and are now stuck in a whirlwind of regret. Take Chloe Cole, for example. She's left wondering who to blame because this movement latched onto her mental health struggles like a leech and took advantage of her vulnerability. They promised freedom and a new life, but what did she get? A lifetime of...
My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. Gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This is the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care.
It's wild how these so-called trans activists are so eager to push vulnerable kids into transitioning, only to abandon them the moment the deed is done. And if someone like Chloe tries to hold them accountable, they're quick to wash their hands of it, saying, well, it was their choice. Convenient, right? But here's the kicker. More and more detransitioners are coming out day by day. But just like this person said, the real tragedy is that their prime targets are children, the ones who hold our future in their hands.
What's gonna happen to the kids and the youth? And there's so many people who regret this. There's more and more and more coming out, and younger too, on puberty blockers, that been on puberty blockers. And, I read one that, I think he went on puberty blockers at 16, and now he's like 20 or 21, and he is like suicidal because his penis won't grow anymore. Like, it does damage. It makes me so angry. And what we're gonna get is a generation that's screwed up. That are screwed up in like 10, 15 years. Wait, not even. I think it's accelerating quite quickly.
Sadly, it's not just kids. Adults with their own struggles are on their radar too. Take Scott Nugent, a former marketing exec who fell victim to this agenda. He's now exposing the harsh realities of transitioning and calling out those responsible.
Here's the thing, and we don't talk about stuff, and I don't know why we don't talk about stuff, because we're butchering an entire generation of children while society's going, yeah, they have no clue. So yes, I thought it was going to fix me. And here's the problem, and here's the truth. The people that medically transition have, the similarities, same-sex attracted. So we're, conversion therapy reversed. Number 2, they're autistic. Number 3, they're mentally gifted. Number 4, they're mentally ill. They are people that have been through trauma. So all these people that don't fit in at a time at 11 or 12 years old when we would cut off our arm to fit in. I mean, it got me at 42. We're telling these kids that, you know what, you don't have a superpower of being different, about being gifted. You'll be a CEO at 25, but, you're different, so let's medically transition you. And then you get to the process and you get through it and you realize, well, that didn't fix a thing. On top of people like in society and you and all that kind of stuff are not saying the truth, because everybody doesn't want to hurt a man's feelings that has a sexual fetish of being considered a woman and wants, gender pronouns.
But some people would see you and see a man and say, well, that's a man. But are you saying it's not possible to change sex?
No, God, no. It's biologically impossible for one sex to become another. What's not impossible is to take cross-sex hormones, to do cosmetic surgery, to appear like the opposite sex for comfort.
Scott even called out Susie Mermaid, saying she should be behind bars for emotionally blackmailing parents into putting their kids on puberty blockers.
Do you think it's simply the case that people don't want to talk about it? Is it simply that it makes them uncomfortable?
It's devastating to talk about
Well, do they think they're doing something good when it comes to these children? That
Yes.
They're saying that they're feeling they're confused, and so they feel this might fix it. A lot of parents are told, if you don't put them on puberty blockers, they'll kill themselves. A lot
And here's what I don't understand about your country. I'm sorry. So we're talking about freedom of speech right here, right? Okay, and if I say something that offends somebody, or if I'm a UK citizen that is wrong or offends their business, then you take them to jail. So why aren't we taking Susie Mermaids from mermaids to jail for saying better an alive daughter than a dead son? There's only one long-term study. All 7 that said it was great have been, rejected. One long-term study says that these kids, the truth, the only 30-year study with over 300 trans reps, these children will be more suicidal after they medically transition. Take her to jail.
And you know what? Scott's got a point about that whole free speech thing. Let's not forget, parents are being penalized for questioning what's taught in schools. Interestingly, these so-called trans activists champion rights until their promises fall apart. When their success stories question the narrative, they drop them like a hot potato and turn on them like a pack of vicious vipers.
I find it really interesting that you would bring up consequences here. You do realize that my detransition and the posts that I've shared regarding my detransition and those of other detransitioners as well are a direct result of the informed consent model. This wave of detransitioners on social media is a consequence of the removal of restrictions regarding medical transition. The less gatekeeping, as many like to call it, the more detransitioners you will have. My beliefs around the concepts of gender and gender identity have shifted as a consequence of my lived experience, my observations, as well as a ton of research that I've done on the topic in the last year. It is unethical for medical professionals to be blindly affirming and encouraging this. Until they stop doing things like prescribing hormones after one visit or writing a letter for top surgery before ever meeting a person.
And behind this movement are doctors eager to push kids into transitioning for cash, not care. This isn't about health, it's about profit.
It's a medical malpractice case. I want to hold the adults who put me in harm's way accountable because, I mean, what happened to me is horrible, but it's also, it didn't only happen to me. That's the worst part. It's happening to children all over the U.S., all over the West, and it's spreading all over the world. And
yes.
I want to be able to create a precedent for other people who have been in my situation to find justice themselves.
How old were you when you were told by a doctor that you could become a different sex?
I was 12.
You were 12 years old. And did you, I mean, I assume at 12 you believe what a doctor tells you.
That is also the main reason why people end up regretting their transition.
Now, looking back, if you had the chance to rewind time, would you have still gotten the surgery?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I think I would have not. The reason why I want to get a second surgery is because I can't go back. Just, the path that I chose out of ignorance, and, I was a bit naive. But that's why I think it's important to be transparent about it, because I think that a lot of trans girls that do undergo that surgery, they kind of like pretend like, oh yeah, my pussy's this, it's so this, and it's so that, and whatever. And it can be, but you also have to, be realistic. Like, if you don't have the money to get all those surgeries, you have to be prepared to possibly have to undergo multiple surgeries in order to get the result that you want.
Honestly, where's law enforcement to crack down on this kind of butchery? It's high time someone steps in to put a stop to these unethical practices and hold these so-called professionals accountable. Finally, Sinead Watson, an ex-trans, exposes a major flaw in the transition promise. Post-surgery euphoria fades quickly, and living with the change becomes a real struggle.
We were having this conversation in 2015. I would tell you that transition saved my life, because I believed that. But you can only pretend for so long. And all the problems that I was running from with transition were still there. And so even with cross-sex hormones, even with the surgery, I was still very, very much struggling with self-hatred. And I'm afraid that cutting your breasts off doesn't remove that.
You had your breasts removed?
Yeah, I got a double mastectomy when I was 26.
What was that? Was there a single moment that you realized I made a grave mistake?
I wouldn't say there was a single moment. It was a progression of realizations that when I first started the cross-sex hormones and the depression was still there, I thought it's because I haven't transitioned enough, so I'll get the surgery. And then I got the double mastectomy and the depression and self-hatred was still there, so I thought, okay, I'll get the hysterectomy and then I'll get the phalloplasty and I'll get everything that I need to get. But fortunately for me, after the double mastectomy, I kind of had that realization where I was like, what if I do go the full way and I still hate myself like this? I didn't need hormones or surgery, I needed therapy.
It's no wonder many end up regretting their decisions once the initial thrill wears off. This trans culture needs to be stopped before it leaves more shattered lives in its wake. At the end of the day, facts don't care about feelings. It's clear that some folks need a serious reality check. If these insights resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more unfiltered truths. Want more wokey takedowns? Click on the screen right now to watch the next video. And remember, don't get swept up in the hype. Stay woke to the truth.